Hello again, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for now Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 4th day of May, 2022. I'm meteorologist David Percy. And up first, the breakup map, river breakup map, and we've got a flood watch out there on the Kuskokwim River for a potential ice jam at Crooked Creek on the Kuskokwim River there, the yellow spot on the chart there on the Kuskokwim River. Again, that's at Crooked Creek for a possible ice jam that could form between now and the outlook or the watch out through Sunday evening. And the potential will remain there until actually the ice moves through and it opens up. But right now it's out through Sunday evening for chance of a potential ice jam at Crooked Creek. Otherwise, still Tanana River, some open across just about the entire stretch of the river there. And Porcupine River has a small area there of some open, but not much. And the Susitna River still mostly ice. And moving on to the hazardous weather graphics, there are no advisories, watches, or warnings out anywhere around the state in the Aleutians, with the main storm track well to the south. No big storms expected for the next couple of days. Maybe something moving out of Russia on the weekend might hit the west coast, but right now, not looking bad. And satellite imagery showing low pressure dropping southward there across the central Bering Sea, kicking some snow showers into the Pribilof Islands today, and starting to increase the westerly flow across the Aleutians. Showers, Adak and Atka, and eventually showers will be on the increase of the eastern Aleutians. But to the east of that feature, some sunshine there over the Kuskokwim Delta and Bristol Bay. And some shower activity, Seward Peninsula earlier today. Snow picked up about an inch of snow. But that ended about 11 a.m. and began to melt with temperatures rising into the mid-30s there by early afternoon. Some sun breaks over the central interior from Fairbanks westward, looks like to Tanana. And otherwise kind of variably to mostly cloudy sky condition with scattered showers around the central and eastern interior, right into the Copper River Basin. And of course the North Gulf Coast, rain falling the entire day at Kodiak Island. They picked up about 0.17 of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours, so pretty light rain there. And cloudy skies with showers across the Panhandle, with heaviest amounts down south, Ketchikan and Heidelberg picking up about 1/4 of an inch each location there. So no heavy rainfall amounts anywhere. The heavier rainfall down with that frontal boundary that's now stalled out across Vancouver Island, sliding up into British Columbia. And to the north of the jet stream there, just more of a showery, unsettled condition with low pressure slowly weakening, but remaining east-southeast of Kodiak. And shower activity extended up into the eastern interior. Eagle picked up about 0.15 of an inch of rain today, and some shower activity there in the along the upper Yukon Valley into the Yukon Flats, and some light snow and snow flurries along the central and eastern Arctic coast as well, St. Lawrence Island. And then that low center tonight drops slowly southward, and that will begin to end the shower activity slowly over the Pribilof, but snow showers will increase for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Adak and Atka, with winds increasing there across, especially Atka Island. Could see gusts of 40 miles an hour late tonight and into early tomorrow as that low drops across Unmak Island. Otherwise, scattered rain and snow showers, kind of that low pressure area east southeast of Kodiak. There, southern Gulf of Alaska or southwest Gulf, several troughs spinning around at a tangent to the low center there. Kind of some of those grazing the coastline. Southern Panhandle see the best chance of some shower activity tonight. Also for the North Gulf Coast, it stays showery and cloudy, but drying out Cook Inlet, or staying dry there. Eastern interior, northward from the Wrangell Mountains, eastern Copper River Basin, all the way up into the Yukon Flats, chance of snow showers, or rain and snow showers, but amounts will be quite light. And then for tomorrow, Thursday, that low kind of tracks right over on Alaska Island by mid-afternoon. and windy and snow showers from Adak eastward to Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and scattered snow showers or rain and snow showers with lighter winds there for the Alaska Peninsula, but amounts on the light side. And to the north, you can see some clearing there for the eastern Bering Sea and dry conditions with some possible sunshine all the way up to the northwest coast. Still looking at some light snow over the eastern Arctic coast, and still cloudy, mostly cloudy, some partial clearing for the eastern and southeast interior, but it looks generally cloudy for the Copper River Basin and North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, with showers mainly over the mountainous terrain, showery again for the Panhandle. And the outlook for Friday, very nice conditions. High pressure dominates the Bering Sea there with light winds and a fair amount of clearing all the way up to St. Lawrence Island with the eastern Aleutians. A dry day with partly sunny skies there and a little warmer temperatures. Still a risk of a shower for the Alaska Peninsula. The next system you can see pushing across the Russian Far East. That'll probably shift eastward in toward the Bering Strait and then kick off to the northeast initially into the northwest interior. And then another system will come across and hit the west coast, come across the eastern Bering Sea, probably during the afternoon on Sunday. That'll bring an increase in weather conditions out in that area at that time. Otherwise, for Friday, rain and snow showers over the interior again and the Panhandle. Not a lot of change really, and nothing heavy, either wind or rain-wise. Low temperatures tonight, looking about 10 to 15 there for the North Slope and the Arctic coast. Everybody above zero now, and probably even above 10 degrees up in that area, with lows in the lower to mid 30s in the interior, upper 20s along the southwest coast to the Pribilofs, and lower to mid 30s for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay, but lower 40s for your lows, Kodiak Island, upper 30s for the Panhandle, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, near 30 for the Copper River Basin, and in the Kuskokwim Valley, lows in the lower to mid 30s, some places even a little bit warmer. And then for the highs tomorrow, mid 50s, central interior, Yukon Flats down into the greater Fairbanks area, Tanana, and lower 50s down toward the Bethel area, Sleep Mute, 52 for your high, upper 40s for Bristol Bay, lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s there from Adak over toward Unalaska, and mid 30s for the Pribilofs. Otherwise, upper 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast, upper 20s there for St. Lawrence Island, and staying in the mid 20s through the Bering Strait with upper 30s forecast for Nome once again. And then the lows for Friday morning, anywhere from 5 to 15 for the Arctic coast and North Slope, into the Brooks Range 15 to 25 for your lows, but south of the mountains there, mostly above freezing, mid 30s or lower to mid 30s, mid to upper 30s there for south central Alaska, 30 to 35 for the Copper River Basin, and the southeast coast, upper 30s to near 40, lower 40s Kodiak once again in the Alaska Peninsula, 30 to 35 for the lows, and near 30 for the Pribilof Islands. And then the highs, mid 30s for St. Paul and St. George, upper 30s, lower 40s there over all of the Aleutians, with lower 40s in the Alaska Peninsula, upper 40s to lower 50s, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, 50 to 55, Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula area in the Copper River Basin. Same thing for the Panhandle, a little cooler north there, Skagway high about 48 or Haines, but otherwise in the lower 50s down toward Heidelberg. Interior, a little bit warmer, call it 55 to 60 there for Tanana, down toward McGrath and Galena, with 56 the forecast high for Fairbanks, 58 for Chalk Yitzhak. Otherwise the Arctic coast cooler with highs in the upper teens to lower 20s and mid 20s to mid 30s for the North Slope.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, moving on to flying weather. IFR there for the North Slope on out to the Arctic coast, starting the day off Thursday morning. Marginal VFR southward into the Koyuk-Kobuk Valley to the northwest coast, Kotzebue Sound, northern Seward Peninsula, IFR from the Bering Strait, right on down across St. Lawrence Island and the Pribilofs to Atka Island, eastward to the Alaska Peninsula, just east of Nelson Lagoon, including, looks like Sand Point, but VFR there, Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay actually, and the lower Yukon River Valley, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and then east of the Kuskokwim Mountains in the valley there, marginal VFR to the Alaska Range, VFR, Eastern Interior, Yukon Flats, and Copper River Basin, Northern Cook Inlet. IFR, though, Iliamna Lake, Kamishak, Kachemak Bays, Shelikof Strait, all of Kodiak Island, into at least southern Resurrection Bay there, south of Prince William Sound, though, with IFR extending eastward to just south of Yakutat, but VFR for the Panhandle. And the afternoon, shaping up pretty good for the southeast coast. A VFR day for most of the Panhandle. Some marginal VFR showing up along the north coast, and more extensive along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, into areas of the Copper River Basin. Some marginal VFR in the northern interior there. Increases, though, when you get to the Brooks Range and becomes IFR north of the mountains on out to the Arctic coast. And IFR for the Chukchi Sea, Seward Peninsula, northern Bering Sea, and just south of the Pribilofs, another zone of IFR there kind of splits off, which covers the Fox Islands, western Alaska Peninsula. But AKwx westward, western Bering Sea, VFR. That holds VFR, western Bering Sea, all the way to Unimak Island for Friday morning. Marginal VFR in Alaska Island, St. Paul, St. George, but IFR, St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island, and portion of the Seward Peninsula there, right along the northwest coast. IFR, Arctic coast, north slope, down into the Kobuk Valley, and some more possible IFR there along the central eastern Alaska Range, maybe, with marginal VFR areas over southern Alaska. VFR holds for the Panhandle and for the afternoon. Friday, pretty good in interior Alaska. VFR there all along the Yukon River Valley, Kuskokwim Valley, Copper River Basin, into this is Sitna Valley, Matanuska Valley VFR, marginal VFR areas of marginal VFR for the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound area. Panhandle still VFR, and it looks like all the IFR there either is off the coast in the Gulf of Alaska or just east of Kodiak Island. And for passes, Anatuvik, call it marginal tomorrow, occasionally marginal for Adigan as well. And Lake Clark and Merrill, though, VFR. VFR for rainy and windy as well, VFR flying. VFR for Isabel, looking good from Antasta once again. Another VFR day for Tanita and Portage. Marginal VFR at times. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet in over central Alaska, southward to Cook Inlet and northeast Bristol Bay. And over the southern Panhandle, so not really much of a thermal gradient aloft here over the state. And as a result, we've got pretty light winds both at the surface and aloft in the forecast. As we go to icing, not much going on here with that. Cold upper low, look for some areas of isolated moderate mixed icing, 2,000 to 8,000 feet, slipping south of the Pribilofs and covering the area from Matka Island across the Fox Islands to the western Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise icing free or nothing significant in the way of icing for the remainder of the state. Jet stream, cold upper low pressure, one just north of the eastern Aleutians dropping southeastward, and a couple of weak lows in the Gulf. That's keeping the main jet well to the south, storm track well to the south, so no big storms anywhere in the state for the next couple of days. And at 9,000 feet, we've got that upper low tracking southeastward. That's where the windiest conditions will be. 20 to 45 knots on the western quadrant of that system. Maybe some 20 knotters showing up on the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula on the north side of that low east of Kodiak Island that continues to weaken. Otherwise, light variable winds over the interior at 3,000 feet, maybe out of the east to 20 knots western Arctic coast, and then 30 to 45 knot winds around that low over on Alaska Island, and possible 25 knot easterlies or 20 to 25 knots into the Barren Islands. That's about it. Light and variable everywhere else. And turbulence, no significant turbulence mainland Alaska, Bering Sea, only possible considerable moderate chop over on Alaska Island there, light to isolated moderate chop as far west as Adak.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Toman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern, looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks, where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often we don't, at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Toman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Not bad on the winds tomorrow across all the southeast coast inside waters, and also along the coast for the north coast, looking at southeast winds 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 knots. Seas just under 10 feet in the south coast. Southerlies at 10 to 15 knots. And for Clarence Strait, southeast winds 15 knots. Stevens Passage southeast at 10, and Lincoln Glacier Bay southerlies at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And moving on to Friday. For the south coast, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots, and then variable 15 knots for the north coast, seas 5 to 6 feet. And for Lincoln Glacier Bay, southerly winds at 10 knots, southeast 10 for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, variable to northwest, 10 knots. Prince William Sound, northeast winds 10 knots for Thursday with 2-foot seas. And for the North Gulf Coast, east northeasterlies 20 knots, northeast 20 for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, winds about 10 knots out of the northeast with slight seas, and 15-knot northeast winds for Kamishak Bay. The Barren Islands, northeast winds 20 knots with 7-foot seas. And then for Friday, light variable wind conditions for Prince William Sound. North Gulf Coast, variable to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots with seas 4 to 5 feet. Northeast 15 for the Barren Islands. Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, southwest winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Kodiak Island, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, seas 5 feet. Bristol Bay, light west winds at 10 knots. And Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, southwest 20 knots, but light variable winds at 10 knots for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Then on Friday, west winds 20 knots for Bristol Bay with 3-foot seas. Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest winds 20 knots, 5 to 8-foot seas. And for Kodiak Island, north winds at 15 knots. For the Fox Islands, we got gale warnings there for Unmak Island and Nikolsky for northwest winds at 35 knots. Otherwise, small craft advisories for Alaska Island, west-northwest at 25 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories Adak and Atka, northwest at 20 and 15 to 20 knot winds for the western Aleutians. And for Friday, Shimei to Kiska, west winds 25 knots. Adak and Atka, northwest at 15. And for the Fox Islands, northwest winds 15 to 25 knots with 5 to 7-foot seas. Southwest coast on Thursday, north winds 10 to 15 knots. Pribilof Island, small craft advisories, northeast 25 with 7-foot seas. Otherwise, St. Lawrence Island, north winds at 20 knots, 15 knots for St. Matthew Island. And then on Friday, St. Lawrence Island And the Yukon Delta coast, looking at northwest winds of 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. Kuskokwim Delta coastline, northwest winds at 20 knots. Light variable wind conditions for the Pribilof Islands with seas down to 3 feet. Southwest 20 for St. Matthew Island. And up along the Arctic coast on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And the central coast, northeast at 20 knots. Brisk wind advisories for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Cape Thompson for northeast winds at 25 knots. Cape Thompson to Wales, looking at northerly winds at 20 knots. And for Friday, Wales to Cape Thompson, northwest 15. Otherwise, we've got brisk wind advisories for the entire stretch of the Arctic coast for east winds at 25 knots. And for tonight, look for low clouds, fog, flurries, eastern Arctic coast into the North Slope. But you can see the central and western part of the state, and also for the eastern Bering Sea, relatively dry with light winds. Still a little gusty on the western Arctic coast, and then that low dropping southeastward brings snow showers into the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula with windy conditions, possibly gusts of 40 miles an hour across Atka Island, but scattered rain and snow showers there for the North Gulf Coast. And Kodiak Island, a little more widespread shower activity going on there, and that'll extend up into northeast Bristol Bay. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, scattered showers for the Panhandle, especially down south. And for tomorrow, flurries, eastern Arctic coast, North Slope, rain and snow showers over the Panhandle and North Gulf Coast, as well as the interior, looking kind of mostly cloudy with showery conditions there, Tanana Valley down along the Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley. But dry with some sunshine, northwest interior, Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta. Snow showers or periods of snow from the Alaska Peninsula to possibly as far west as Adak. Otherwise, the outlook for Friday, much better conditions. That low drop southeastward, high pressure controls of Bering Sea. Still looking at showery conditions with cool temperatures and mostly cloudy skies, southeast part of the state. In the Panhandle, still a risk of a snow shower on the eastern Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.